Hello, welcome everyone tuning in. I've got Ron Ridenour for company again. Thanks, Ron, for joining us.
You're welcome. Glad to be
Yeah,
here.
Ron, there's a lot happening in your part of the world. Ron Ridenour is a veteran American journalist. He's been living in Denmark for the last 20 years or so. He's the author.
35.
He's the author of this fantastic book, the Russia Peace Threat, Pentagon on Alert. He's covered American imperialism for over much of his life as a journalist. Ron, Denmark and Trump are really at loggerheads here over his threat to annex or purchase Greenland by force, with using military if necessary. The Europeans are all gathering around like clucking hens, vowing to support Denmark. I mean, the French government is now saying they will deploy troops to Greenland to protect Denmark's sovereignty because Greenland is a colony and not an autonomous region of Denmark. Ron, are the Europeans and the Americans going to go to war?
Well, no, sometimes I express something too drastically, almost like Trump, like he would say, "Oh yeah, why not? That's a good idea." Well, of course, I don't want any war, but I'm laughing and I'm glad. I have never been so glad since I moved to this country in 1980. I've been here 35 years. I was 10 years in other countries, and what's happening in the media is even subtly. They don't say it directly, but some of the one of the major debate programs the other day just said, well, the only difference between this is the host, the most popular host of debate, and he said in my own words, there's not that much new about Trump except that he's telling it like it is. And he went back and he says, Denmark has been in this situation. He didn't call it a colony since 1945. And that's the truth.
Mhm.
The United States did not take over Denmark at the end of the Second World War. It was both Russia and England. But the United States sent in Marshall Plans, and the Danes as a whole, most all the political parties, and today all the political parties in Parliament support the colony, being a colony.
Yeah.
But
So, Ron,
now,
let me just cut in on you here, Ron. Sorry to be so rude, but why are you glad? Explain that, please. Why are you suddenly glad about this whole clash with Trump and Denmark and the European Union? What gives you such pleasure to see this
because
fight?
I have been disgusted by the Danish people as a whole, not just the politicians, for accepting Denmark, the United States, like, that's the good guy. Somebody, I just quoted him saying, he said, as an influencer, he wrote in a newspaper, uh, during Vietnam, we thought that was rather gruesome, rather bad. We thought taking over Latin American countries was not a good idea. But in the final analysis, the United States is the good guy.
He was he was a Danish, right? Influence a
Yeah,
Danish
he's an influencer,
public figure, right?
yeah, and
Right.
uh, and that's the general attitude of the vast majority of Danes. And I've
Right.
been disgusted with them. They don't have self-respect. They don't even really want their own sovereignty. But here comes Trump, like with a Mussolini, his best friend or something, with a Mussolini salute, and with him, wanting to be the dictator of the United States. He's telling it like it has always been.
Right.
The United States has owned Europe since the Marshall Plan, and now they're overreacting. I mean, of course they're not going to go to war, but when France comes out and says they're going to send troops, and this woman who loves killing Russians, Kahi Gallas, some the high representative of EU, she says, we're standing with Denmark, we're supporting the member state." And others are saying, yes, it's not a bad idea to send troops. But then what is Mette Frederiksen, the prime minister here? She says, well, she says, well, we're not, however, we don't have any desire for such a mission at present, she said about military support. So I think that it's quite possible that the Danish people as a whole and some of the parties anyway will say, okay, maybe we ought to figure out how to be Danes,
Mm,
without colonies. We don't
mhm.
want to be a colony anymore because we don't like this guy, The
Yeah,
CIA doesn't like this guy either. So, there's something good about him there.
right.
If both the CIA and yeah.
Yeah. So what you're appreciating about Trump is just that he blows away the whole charade of the relationship between as the
Right.
American protector of shining knight in armor towards Europe. The whole premise of NATO and American military in Europe since the Second World War. You're saying that's a whole charade. It's always been about the Americans dominating the Europeans and really dictating to them to buy the American weapons and what have you. And this whole clash is exposing the real relationship.
Exactly, exactly. It's I came to think about Bob Dylan today. Sovereignty is blowing in the wind. The sovereignty of Europe is
Hmm.
blowing in the wind. I mean, it's quite possible that they'll, maybe the issue or what has been an issue for before about Europe having its own army. Not that I want more armies, but I mean, it's like they're saying we can't trust the United States now. And they're very upset that he might just, do something about this Ukraine war because they've invested so much, not just money and weapons. I mean, huge percentages. I
Yeah.
could give you some figures if we had time, but and now they're giving, after in 2 days ago the Danish home rule and Denmark's leaders met, and for the first time they made a pact which goes out for any issue of military or surveillance on Greenland now has to be approved by both governments, the home rule government of Greenland and the Danish government. That's like showing respect because they're being, because the Greenland's people are, saying, well, like we have been colonized by you. As I told you in an earlier
Hmm.
in an earlier talk, I
Interview.
gave you
Yeah.
some figures. They gave $2 billion now for greater military and surveillance support. They only give $800 million every year for any support of Greenland. And it's just, it's mostly policing and so forth. They've just now tripled it in one day. They're sending three Arctic ships, two long-range drones, satellites, and they're going to train Greenlanders to, quote, be sovereignty prepared for sovereignty. And
Hmm.
another funding package is going to come. They've spent $9 billion, which is the fourth highest figure in absolute terms to give to kill people in Ukraine and Russia.
Hmm.
Now, the defense minister just said we're going to find 43 billion more dollars over a 5-year term to be better prepared for any eventuality in the Arctic. So,
Hmm.
they're shoring up, they're trying to show Big Daddy, like
Hmm.
always, but this Big Daddy is a real Big Daddy. Hey, we're really doing what you want us to do. And that's the same thing that happened in 2016 when he was going to come to Denmark and the same prime minister said, it's absurd that you want to take Greenland.
Yeah.
But it's not absurd at all.
Okay, Ron. I mean, Trump is really insisting that he's going to take Greenland. I mean, his comments there at the weekend again repeated the importance of strategic importance of Greenland, this Arctic island, the biggest island on the planet. He's repeated his ambitions to have that territory because it's a massive territory. Like it's 2 million square kilometers. I just calculated that's about a fifth of the United States existing territory. 20% of the US territory. It's allegedly rich in oil and minerals, rare earth metals. So Trump really wants this territory for massive material incentives, and he seems determined to take it. Now, what will happen if he goes ahead and puts his foot down and takes this territory? What are the Europeans going to do about it?
Well, I can't predict what they're going to do, but I think that it's not going to happen that way because, first of all, he said he wouldn't rule it out, but now, with this, with I mean Denmark, the highest leaders of Denmark, the two highest leaders, the prime minister and the foreign minister, are now on a tour, a whirlwind tour throughout Europe.
Mm.
Okay, but there's daily contact between the leadership here and the leadership of Denmark, of Greenland. They just took a poll yesterday, it came out. 85% of the Greenlanders do not want to be in um, do not want to be in the do not want to be taken over.
By
Only
the United States.
9%, only 9% of the Greenlanders want to continue to be in the so-called Kingdom of Denmark. But the Greenlanders are not accepting this idea about being under uh, a state or whatever,
Yeah,
a,
they
a,
want they want
a project of the United States. So if it's true that these European leaders will do more than just talk, I mean, already offering France offering to send troops. I mean, that is really, I mean, that's unheard of, you know. So
Mm.
that's going over what I had suspected. I just got through sending an article away this yesterday in which I said there's no way in hell that the Europeans are going to stand up militarily to the United States. And I
Yeah.
still don't think they will. But maybe some of them are trying to, tell to Trump, we know you like tough guys, you like the
Mm.
North Korean, so we're going to be tough with you too. In
Mm.
other words, this would maybe the first time that leadership in Europe is telling, the United States, hey, we can be tough too. Schultz, in February 7th, 2022, when Prime Minister Schultz from Germany was with Biden, and they had this press conference, and they said if Russia comes in, invades Ukraine, we're going to get rid of the Nord Stream. Well, they got rid of the Nord Stream. That lost, I mean, untold billions of dollars to the German economy. That was the major blow to its economy. And now they were sucking ass after that to import the dirty fracking gas from the United States, which is now being exported to many countries in Europe.
Mm.
So, they had no balls. They had no sense of sovereignty until Trump came into the picture. And,
Mm.
they just kissed Biden's ass and Obama's ass all the time. Well,
Mm.
in this sense, I'm glad that it's a Trump that there's right now rather than a Biden because he's telling it like it is.
Mhm. Yeah. Okay. But yeah, I suspect, Ron, the Europeans, well, they're very the European leadership, that is, they're servile, they're obsequious, they pander to the Uncle Sam, the American leadership. I agree with you. I don't think they have got the backbone to stand up to Trump's threats to take Greenland. What I think they'll do is they'll try to make a sort of a deal with Trump, and I think it'll involve something to do with Ukraine. Um, you know, uh, Let me just mention, on the day that your Prime Minister Frederiksen was running around Europe, in a flap, trying to get solidarity from Schultz and Macron and the NATO chief Mark Rutte. The EU's foreign policy chief, Kaja Kallas, who was the former Estonian prime minister, she had a phone call, her first phone call with Marco Rubio. I don't know if you saw the report on it, Ron, but it was the very same day that the Danish prime minister was running around in a flap looking for support. And yet the EU's foreign affairs top diplomat Kaja Kallas had her first phone call with Marco Rubio. Now, according to the reports, Ron, that I saw on Euronews, she did not even mention Greenland and Denmark's sovereignty. The whole conversation was focused, according to the readouts from the Europeans and the Americans, it was all focused on tightening sanctions on Russia. So I think that the Europeans won't do anything in the way of protecting Danish sovereignty or Greenland or the European Union. They'll cut a deal with Trump somehow regarding Ukraine.
Well, I want to correct you. Perhaps Callas didn't say anything yesterday, but she did say, 2 days ago, um, this about Greenland. She said this
Yeah, I saw
language
that.
of transaction. No, we are not negotiating on Greenland. She says we, the United Nations, I mean rather EU, is not negotiating on Greenland. We are supporting our member state Denmark and its autonomous region. It's a
Mhm.
semi-autonomous region, but that's all right. She has said that before, just 2 days ago. Uh, and she then concluded we shouldn't underestimate our own power. And I want to make a correction too about my or our state's minister. She is not my prime minister. And I think a lot of people on the left, you're not from the United States, but a lot of people on the left of the United States say our government and, et cetera. They're not our government. They're not our state's ministers. They're not
Mhm.
our presidents. They're the enemies. They're the capitalist class. They do not represent me. So
You're wrong. Sorry,
I don't think there's going to be a
I was a bit facetious and incorrect to say your prime minister. I apologies, apologies, Ron. But anyway, Ron, let's just kind of keep concentrated on your main point in that you're happy. You're absolutely not a take it a fan of Donald Trump or his politics and his oligarchic kind of style. All his buddies, his billionaire buddies. I understand that, Ron. But what you're pleased about is that for once in the whole 8 decades of post-war relations between the United States and Europe, Trump is exposing the rot and the rotten servility of the Europeans under American hegemony. That's what your point is.
Right, right. And he's got a lot of friends, like he just said yesterday. He said something about, in my first term, I had everybody against me, and now I have everybody with me. Well, of course, he always exaggerates. Not everybody was against him then, and not everybody's with him now. But he did learn and he did prepare for, this term. He's
Mhm.
very clear that the new rich, not the old rich like the Rockefeller and Morgans, but the new rich are with him 100%. This
Yeah.
is going to backfire, and I understand the little bit that I have just seen from a friend of mine in Denmark, rather in the United States, that there's a lot of already protests going on, not just from the left, but he's taking over an Indian reservation. He's
Mm.
already throwing people out of the country, and there will be a backfire. There will be a backlash, and
Yeah.
it's already beginning. I thought it would take some more
Yeah.
time. So this is great. There's a backlash already in Europe. There's a backlash already beginning in the United States. I
Yeah.
don't think he's going to last 4 years, but
Right.
uh, but there will be, tremendous conflicts. There will
Yeah.
be lots of murder, deaths. There will be lots of people going to jail. This is a period of
Mm.
chaos. This is not anything that Marxism has planned or has foreseen. But I, as a Marxist, analyze this from my perspective, and I think um, that we're going to have a whole different world in the next 4 years, if we have a world at all. And
So
the
you
whole idea of BRICS, the whole idea of Russia and China, and already 60 almost 60% of the world population is into BRICS. BRICS is going to grow, and there's going to be a new world for most of the people. It's now going to be toughest in the United States and in Europe, because
yeah,
I don't think that the United States Army is going to be able to stop all of the changes that people want to make in the so-called global South.
yeah,
And we're going to have better and better, fights in many, many places. Immigrants or refugees are going to be thrown back to their countries. Well, then they're going to be in their countries, and some of them are going to fight the leaders that the United States has supported, the right wing and fascist leaders in Latin America. So I see this with a lot of pain, but I see this with hope.
Ron, can I just sort of venture an interpretation of what you're saying, if I may say, put it like that? You're saying that Trump is going to what you're happy about is you think Trump will accelerate the demise, the fall of the American-led Western Empire. Is that a fair way to put
Yeah,
it? Yeah.
right. not
because he's so confrontational and so abrasive, so like unorthodox in his relationships with the diplomatic relations with even their allies. You think this he's going to generate so much chaos and resentment, it will only fuel the American demise, the demise of American capitalism, American imperialism.
well, I can't say the demise entirely, but yes, I think the economy is going to be drastically hurt.
Yeah.
Inflation is going to take place. Uh, and his own supporters are going to be more and more, tough with him. And there's going to be the opponents, not these Democrat idiots and progressives, but a lot of people who are going to be hurt by his measures
You
are
mean
going to take to the streets.
you mean
And
a working class
well, some of the
movement?
working class, and some of his own supporters, working class people who were going to lose jobs or not have
Mm,
certain benefits that they have been used to. He's taking back a lot of welfare. This is going to have a backlash with many of his own people.
right.
And that they're not going to change in a month's time, but maybe in a year or 2 years.
Yeah.
It's going to be a period of real struggle. And unlike the only good president in the last year of his life that I'm aware of, other than, okay, let's say FDR did some good things and Lincoln, helps free the slaves at the same time he was killing Indians. But John F. Kennedy put, the Pentagon and the deep state on notice that he was the president and they weren't. And they murdered him for that. There's just no doubt in my mind. And even Oliver Stone, his second book, his second film on that, points out that it was the CIA. Now, if the CIA, I'm sure has burnt every original document, but this Mussolini Trump has challenged the deep state, and he has taught many people, the right wing working class people, that the deep state is evil, that it's anti-American. This is
Mhm.
going to cause splits that we could never do. I always wanted to go to Langley. Let's demonstrate in front of Langley. Nobody wants to do that. But I'll tell you, some of these right-wing Trumpites, if the CIA tries to kill Trump, there'll be a civil war. There'll be an uproar of brutal militias, and
Yeah.
it'll all go crazy. So I think even the deep state is going to be cautious not to kill him as they did kill President Kennedy.
Yeah. So we're in very turbulent times,
We're in turbulent times.
but you see it as there's potential for some historical advance. I mean, like a progress in terms of making a more just society, a more just world, peaceful world out of this chaos and turmoil that Trump is unleashing.
We ought to understand, and one can say I'm 85 years old, so I'm ready to die. If you're 25, you're not ready to die. But we can never win against this gigantic monster of capitalism if people don't fight. And when we fight, what some of us are going to die. If we don't fight, then they're going to do anything they want to do. And one day, more and more people will wake up and say, "Well, why didn't I fight?"
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
that's what history tells us. The
yeah.
Russian people in 1917 made a peaceful revolution. In those 7 days, there wasn't even a handful of people that died. What did the United States do? Along with Japan and most of Europe, they invaded Russia. They had a peaceful revolution. The people wanted to have bread, land, and peace, and they wouldn't let them do it. And
Yeah.
one of the things that we must do, and
It's
we
all
never should forget,
it's
is that
all
the
in this.
United States invaded Russia and that they were prepared to bomb 200 cities in 1950 with 400 atomic bombs. They were willing in Operation Drop Shot. Everybody should read about Operation Drop Shot. And my
Mm,
friend and colleague Dave Lindorf has made a great book, I am a spy for no country. Ted Hall and Klaus Fuchs gave the information so that the Russians could have their own atomic bomb before that was expected, and it saved them from being abolished by this United States. And
mhm.
now the people of the world are regaining, are taking their sovereignty back in many countries, and I hope
Yeah.
that Europe will too.
Yeah, Trump, Ron, he seems to be on a bit of a roll. Did you see that spat he had with the Colombian president and forced the Colombian government to, do a U-turn on their refusal to take in deported immigrants? Trump had flown military planes with alleged illegal immigrants from Colombia into the United States, and he rounded up several of them and sent them back on planes. The Colombians refused to accept the planes. Then Trump threatened to put tariffs on their exports, coffee and oil, 50% tariffs, which would have probably devastated the Colombian economy. The Colombians then conceded to Trump's threats. And then I don't know if you saw it, Ron, but he posted a kind of an artificial intelligence crafted image of himself wearing a mobster outfit, mobster suit with a fedora hat. And in the background was this kind of acronym FAFO, which apparently stands for fuck around, find out. So, I mean, he's completely, he's completely upended any kind of diplomatic protocol or any, like sort of like sort of sense of decent communications. I mean, he's fuck around and find out is what he said, and it's on his social, his Truth social media. I mean, it's his release of this image. But the guy, the president, seems to be very now on a roll, very full of himself that he's kicking ass, and that's why. It can only kind of make the situation all the worse because he's going to keep pushing, you know, uh, stamping on other countries, stamping on allies, and kind of creating a lot of resentment and a lot of chaos. So hopefully that will tie into what you're predicting, which will generate more resistance or a new form of politics of resistance across the world towards American capitalism.
Yeah, but that's my point. Yes, I knew of some of what you said, but I can't expect that every government in Latin America uh, will accept what he wants. At the same time, perhaps if they're not already in BRICS, they should come into BRICS and get better deals within this growing or opposition to U.S. American exceptionalism, to Wall Street.
Mm,
Uh,
mm,
Both Russia and China have capitalist economies, and so does Cuba, and so does Venezuela. There are no socialist economies in the world today, but if BRICS can grow and be solid with a new economy for the people in the organization, and with a new currency, with their own currency, then then maybe the new capitalism that is more cooperative can evolve into socialism. That's a
mm,
possibility. Whereas socialism, the idea of socialism being won in the United States is basically absurd, certainly at this point in history. But the reactions to this bombastic president could also lay the groundwork in the United States for a better possibility to organize.
mm,
When Trump says "drill, baby, drill," I would like to say, as the founders of the International Workers of the World said, organize, baby, organize. You know,
mm. Yeah. Ron, we're running out of time here. I'm just going to ask you, with Trump's kind of bruising, bombastic, bullying, style, he's kicking ass all around the place. Sorry, I think I lost you there on. He's kicking ass all around the place and full of himself. And even towards Putin, he's saying, you got to make a deal over Ukraine. He's pretty much laying down trying to lay down the law. How do you think that kind of bruising, bullying attitude will play with the Russians, given that they're pretty much in the dominant position in this proxy war that NATO is fighting against Russia in Ukraine? Do you see Putin being in any ways kind of like cowed by Trump's bully tactics.
This is this is the man. I've never met him and I've never really been in Russia, but I the book that you just showed, I did a lot of research, a year's research, and I have in my book there much of what I could learn about that man, and I think that he's the greatest diplomat, one of the greatest diplomats in human history, and
Vladimir Putin, you're talking about, Ron.
I'm talking about my president, Vladimir Putin. If I could, I would live in Russia today. I would fight with the Russian people for their sovereignty. And this man has been able to withstand all of the bombast from the other U.S. presidents, including Obama, who was the worst president until now because he created his own wars. He started five of his own wars, and he was a tremendous disappointment to the black people of the United States because
Hmm.
he didn't even really concentrate on them. But every time that they sent, messages to President Putin that they were going to treat Russia the way they treated Yeltsin, that drunken idiot, and he gave away the sovereignty. He gave away the good economy that was still left from the Soviet Union, and the average age of people increased 5 years. From the end of the Soviet Union, there was 1.5% poverty in Russia. At the end of Yeltsin, it was up to almost it was 46% according to the IMF and the World Bank. So
Hmm.
when Putin came in as president, he changed all that. He started to revive the sovereignty of his own people and to put the economy in a good state again. And there's no poverty in that country. So, he is the best possible. I can
So,
only hope that he
Ron,
wins this. What?
sorry to cut in on you. We've only got a couple of minutes left. So, to put it in a nutshell, you don't see Putin bending the knee or
Right,
entertaining Trump's
right.
bullying.
He
The
can't.
Europeans probably will fold over like the paper lions they are, paper tigers rather. But you don't see Putin, being anyways pressured or bullied by
Oh,
Trump. It'll be interesting to see how Trump reacts to that.
well, I'm so disappointed I thought that would be the one thing that who would do. And obviously he's put that on the back burner
What's
doing
that?
well, demanding a dialogue with for peace, a real peace, and
Uh-huh.
for getting out, for stopping, sending any arms. I don't think they're sending arms right now, but when he's threatening President Putin, he's not going to win there.
Hmm.
President Putin is a strong man, and he's a diplomat, and he is going to maintain the basic demands. The absolute basic demands are that Crimea and Donbass are now in the Russian Federation. That will continue. That Ukraine will not be in NATO, and that should remain the fact. About denazification, I don't know how that's going to be possible, at least in whatever is left of Ukraine. That's that he cannot deal with. But those basic demands, I don't think can possibly be
Yeah.
for negotiation.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Right. Ron, we're gonna have to leave it there because I don't want you to be cut off in mid-sentence as you were the last time we were I was interviewing you. But I just want to say thanks again, Ron, for joining me and sharing your thoughts and experience with me and anybody's tuning in here. We covered a lot there, and thanks a lot, Ron.
You're welcome. Viva Ruslan.
Bye,
Viva
Ron.
Russia.
Bye, bye, Ron. Thank you.
Bye bye.
Just struggling to find it. Ah, there we go. Okay, Ron. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Thanks, Ron.
Yeah.